She graduated summa cum laude with a BS degree in business and a master's degree from Notre Dame de Nature. She is a biotech consultant, a certified meeting professional, a certified sommelier. How do you say it? Sommelier. As you know, I don't drink wine, so I don't even know how to pronounce the name. She is co-producing a documentary about the attack on farmers' and ranchers' property rights, essentially about Agenda 21. In June, she attended the conference in Rio, as I mentioned, and she is running for Congress. Isn't that exciting to have someone of her caliber running for Congress? Let's give Debbie a big warm welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Orlene and the Pellegrinis. It's good to see everyone, and it's great to be here. And my question to everyone is, are we being represented? And now is not the time to be a sunshine patriot. So here's the agenda of this presentation. First, we're going to talk about representation. Then we're going to talk about some facts, change, attacks, and hope. And here's the message. We are experiencing what is called incrementalism. This is an attack on our freedom. They are nudging us towards communitarianism, and now is not the time to sit idly by. So we live in an age of massive communication means, the internet, texting, Facebooking, even snail mail. We still have old ways of communicating. So with all these amazing forms of communication, shouldn't we be the best, most informed voters the world has ever known? So with all these forms of communication, and since we elect our officials, we should have open, two-way communication with our elected officials, not only so that we can share our concerns, but also so that our elected officials can do the very best job that they can do. And the importance of this is we need to be able to plan our future. We need to be able to plan for our children and our grandchildren's future. So here's a question. If our representatives are doing their job, then are they informing you of these facts? Fact, the federal government is now in control of all student loans. So what must your child, your grandchild do? What hoops must they run through in order to get a higher education? Fact, through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government now controls over 90% of the mortgage industry. So what must you do in order to buy a home? Fact, the Affordable Health Care Act contains 17 new revenue provisions, and within that, 20 new taxes, including one 3.8% tax on capital gains. You sell your home, anything over $100,000 is taxed at 3.8% under this new law. And under this new law are 159 new bureaucracies. So here's the person I'm running against, Jackie Speier, and here's what she has to say about the Affordable Health Care Act.
Speaker, today American women win. Congress has finally done something right. No more co-pays for contraception. No more co-pays for mammograms. No more co-pays for well women visits. No more co-pays for diabetes screening, DV counseling, HPV DNA testing, or HIV screening.
So in America, because we save billions of dollars on not having to pay co-pays, we win. Well, I've had the pleasure of talking to Dr. Vecchio. She's from Denver, Colorado.
I'm a physician, I'm a radiologist. My job is to find breast cancer. Let me tell you what this law, now the law of the land, pretty much for sure, unless we can change it ourselves, right? What this law means to me as a physician and to 800,000 physicians across our country. When I see a breast patient, when I do a mammogram, and I work her up at the end of my workup, according to the government, I can only recommend a screening mammogram for women over 50 every other year until 74 and then never again. Okay? That violates the American Cancer Society guidelines. This is just one example of what this is. American Cancer Society says every year after the age of 40, until the woman no longer wants to have a mammogram. Screening mammography has been proven to decrease the number of women who die from breast cancer by 30 to 40%. just screening mammography. These government rules that I will have to abide by will cause me to violate my Hippocratic oath, and I won't do it. I will violate their guidelines every day, many times a day. As a result of that, as a result of my violations, I will be fined, I won't be paid, and I could be put in jail.
So I'd like to ask the person I'm running against, I'd like to ask Jackie, is a trivial copay price worth losing your mother, losing your grandmother because they got untimely, inadequate care? Fact, government panels will now control all of our health, your children's health, your parents' health, your grandchildren's health. So the most important areas of our lives, our children, our home, our children's education, our health, are all now controlled by the federal government. And if that isn't enough, we have this issue going on. In our rural lands, in our neighborhoods, we are under attack. Farmers and ranchers are under attack, rural lands and public roads are being locked up, and our freedom is being stolen here in the Bay Area with massive plans. Fact, the United Nations is in our government. Fact, the United Nations agenda for the 21st century on sustainable development is here, and it's alive, and it's real. And this means massive change for you and me. They will count everything in the form of greenhouse gases. They will claim it's global warming. Sustainable development, and really what this is population control and control of every aspect of our lives.
Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to thank Chairman Fassell and Mr. Broomfield, Mr. Yatron and Mr. Beereiter, the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, and the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their assistance in expediting consideration of this legislation. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21 to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and at the direction of a high-level government official. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission headed by an Undersecretary General. Third and lastly, the President is urged to report to Congress on the progress made on with this action. HCON Res 353 is supported by the administration. I have been in contact with the appropriate offices of the State Department and have incorporated their suggestions into the resolution. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with the environmental issues. The Earth Summit presented world leaders with an opportunity that should not be lost. We must now embark on a new course that will sustain our planet and its resources for the benefit of future generations. This resolution calls on the United States to assert its leadership to achieve this goal. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thanks again to the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their recognition of the importance and timeliness of this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I had to go see for myself. We're told all the time that we're conspiracy theorists. And I wanted to see with my own two eyes what this United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Rio +20 celebration was all about. Here's my official United Nations badge. So maybe I'm now a universal global citizen. And what I saw as a corporate event planner was more waste, more hypocrisy, and more lies than I've ever seen in my entire lifetime put together. When I asked people from other countries about Agenda 21 and asked them if they had heard of it before, I got laughed at. I got told, oh my, we've been talking about it for over 20 years. Really, the idea was, or the sensation I got from other people was, where are you? You're behind the times. I also asked about ICLEI, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, otherwise known as Local Authorities for Sustainable Development. I was told that they are one of the most powerful groups in the world, that they partner with not only special interest groups like the Sierra Club, Greenbelt Alliance, but they also partner with local governments and bring groups together to create policy. This is an unelected group of people now creating policy within the United States. More things that I saw at the Rio Earth Summit, more buses than I've seen in a lifetime together in one area. The closest hotel was an hour away. The furthest hotel was 3 hours away. So for a conference that was supposed to be about saving the earth, it was hardly about saving the earth. It was more about creating change, massive change. Government and special interest groups, non-government organization, want our behavior to change, not theirs. Even though they can have this massive conference, they can fly all over the world and do other conferences to say that global warming is alive and real. They spend massive amounts of greenhouse gases to get places, but their behavior is not changing, but ours is. Cass Sunstein, one of Obama's very first appointed czars, wrote a book called Nudge. Cass Sunstein is an attorney. He's married to Samantha Power. Samantha Power believes in genocide. Her husband, Cass, believes that animals, we should be their guardians, not their owners. Because if you're their guardian, then the animals can sue you. They can have their own attorneys and they can sue you. Cass Sunstein also wants to see away with guns and hunting. So in his book, he calls for people to be Homer Simpson-like. In other words, we all have a bit of duh to us, a bit of stupidity. And if we have a bit of stupidity in us, you can take advantage of it. And you can nudge people in the direction that you want them to go. For example, open space. So we've been in many Delphi meetings about open space and what to do with it. You can see in your own general plans that they want to create more open space. So where do you get the open space is the first question. As they go through the Delphi technique, they'll ask you different questions, and you get to vote, because this is a country of freedom, and you get to vote. A might be, don't do anything with the open space. B might be, let's create trails. And C might be, let's develop it into high-density living areas. And you are sitting in the audience going, wait, where's the D? I want D, because that is someone's private property, and you can't be making decisions about somebody's private property. So this is nudge. They're giving us so many choices and then giving us the impression that, oh, that's freedom. You chose, and the public was all for this. So here's a couple of examples. These slides are online. This is the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, 2011. They did a presentation to California Air Resource Board and California Public Utility Commission. And you could see at the very bottom, they want to change us from consumer ownership model to shared model. So how many have heard of bike shares, car shares? You share books now, right? So here's another great one. They want you to move from electric beaters into manual egg beaters. They want you to air dry your clothes, play guitar instead of watching TV tonight. They want you to bike versus drive. They also want you to change your behavior about lifestyle. For example, change your behavior, what you think about a detached single-family home to a shared home. So they want you out of this, then they want you in this, finally, they want you on that. They don't want you using that. They want you using this. So who knows about plans that are pushing us towards that direction? Well, we've got a whole plethora here in the Bay Area. The One Bay Area, please raise your hand as I announce these things if you heard of these things. The One Bay Area plan, transit villages, ICLEI, high-speed rail, homes being the size of a jail cell, 250 to 350 square feet, cap and trade. Everybody's hand should be raised on all of those things, which begs the question, are we being represented? So why should you be concerned? Here in the Bay Area, just the One Bay Area plan alone is slated at $240 billion as its baseline price. 24,000 new units in San Francisco. This is not people, because how many people can fit in a unit? 1, 4, 5, I don't know. Cities that don't comply with this do not get funding. This is already a federally funded plan, as is all the other plans that I mentioned earlier. The transit villages, the Grand Boulevard Initiative. Private property will be taken or it will lose value. As you could think about the Grand Boulevard Initiative, for example, it's to take El Camino Real, create a large center divide. They're going to put a high-speed bus, which it won't be high-speed. It can't be high-speed, not with all the stops it has to take. It'll widen the sidewalks. It'll reduce the lanes down to 1 lane each direction. In some places, currently, the lanes are 3 or 4 wide in each direction. And then they're going to have high-rise, vertical sprawl instead of horizontal sprawl. And with vertical sprawl, somebody's view is going to be impacted. Somebody's private home is going to be at the impact of this massive plan. Forces you out of your car, it changes population, and it changes the way we live every day of our lives. So shouldn't we know this from our representatives in the Bay Area? And is this the change that we want? Is this the change that we want? Here's another example of change. This I got from the California government website, Food and Agriculture. So you could see, look at all that environment change right there. This is all based on greenhouse gases, remember, and us changing our behavior. Well, if you look at this is a typical farm, right? Except the only thing that doesn't impact the environment, according to the government's picture, is that wind turbine. Just a quick, when you go around talking to people about what's happening, you hear all the time that cattle ranchers, farmers, are responsible for over 50 to 55% of the world's global warming. You also hear that farmers and ranchers, especially beef producers, beef causes obesity. But here's a fact, the size of your palm, you have as much zinc in the size of your palm, and you would have to eat 12 3-ounce cans of tuna to get the same nutritional value for zinc. B12, great for your brain and nervous system. You need B12. Well, in order to get the B12 that you'd get from 3 ounces of beef, you're going to have to eat 7 chickens. So I don't know which is more fattening. This slide, 100% of that slide is from beef or livestock byproduct. Paint, candles, stearic acid is a sticky fluid. It helps hold tires together, asphalt together, insulation. Why do I tell you this? Because the livestock industry is under attack. Our own USDA wants to have meatless Mondays. And our children are learning this too. Our children are learning that livestock cause global warming, ranching destroys forests in the Amazon. We already have, supposedly, according to the United Nations, March 22nd was declared World Water Day. And they declared it World Water Day because supposedly we're losing water all over the earth. We're losing fresh, stored water. Like I said, beef causes obesity, and traditional farming and ranching is very bad for the environment. That's why we need to move to sustainable farming and ranching. And here's the other. Having a family is no longer a good thing. This is my parents' ranch. And according to these people, this is unsustainable. Open space like that, unsustainable. My mom's yard, unsustainable. A pond my dad put in for more water, unsustainable. Cows, unsustainable. But that wind turbine is sustainable. A city on landfill, sustainable. Berkeley, sustainable. High density living, pack and stack housing, sustainable. A bridge being built by Chinese, sustainable. Special interest groups that throw huge parties that cost $500 a ticket to talk about global warming, sustainable, and places like this, unsustainable. Animals like that, unsustainable. So we are living in some unordinary times where the attack is happening and it's real. This is Siskiyou County numbers. An incidental take permit, $25,000 per fish per fine if the coho salmon is found on any one of our ranches up in Siskiyou County. Fencing setbacks, they want us to fence 100, 150 feet off of our rivers each way. This is prime ag land. They want us to change from flood irrigation to sprinkler irrigation. You think about sprinkler, first of all, you lose water from transevaporation in the air, and then the water evaporates off the plant. Flood irrigation is excellent because it feeds into the aquifer, and the roots want to follow the water down into the ground. We had our Water Master program canceled, and my parents' bill for our Water Master, Jerry Brown, canceled the program. It went from $450 on one day per year to $3,600 the next day per year. And also, and I'm sure Sheriff Lopi is going to talk about this, with dam removal, they're already charging electricity rates, which have gone up 300% in Siskiyou County alone. Now remember, we also have the Delta, and they shut off the water in the Delta. So this is not just an attack on Siskiyou County. This is an attack on California ranchers and farmers. It's an attack on our food industry. And this is unsustainable, but it is a real attack. And the truth. Don't we just want the truth? The truth will set us free. Yet our representatives aren't sharing this with us. They're not telling us the truth, and we deserve the truth. How many are familiar with AB 32 and SB 375, cap and trade? Do you know the details of this new legislation? Who knows the details? How can you plan your future if you do not know that you're going to have to upgrade your engines as a farmer or rancher to 2004 engines or better? Your home has to, whatever energy your home consumes, you must recreate with your home. So you must put in solar panels, and you must put in wind turbines and whatever else to make your home zero energy efficient, or however they're terming it. Our food imports are increasing. The cost of our food is increasing. We have new regulations, new permits, new fees, and they're rewriting previous laws. And all of this is killing California businesses. Yet in the news, you hear California is on the gain again. We're not. We're losing 5.4 to 5.6 businesses a week. By the time tomorrow rolls around, supposedly another 3,000 people will have left California. And in the census from 2008 to 2010, 877,000 people lost this state. That is revenue that would help our communities, our schools, our fire departments, our sheriff departments. That's revenue that California needs and is being pushed out because of massive regulation. So higher food prices, higher energy prices, and these costs are going to be passed on to you and me. And our living costs are going to skyrocket. And this is your disposable income, the income that you use to put your children in school, to put clothes on your children's back, to put food on your table. And it is disappearing very fast. Here's another law that we weren't told about. Luckily, this one did not pass. AB 2179 would take the California Department of Fish and Game and give it more power than ever before. So we love to recreate, right? We love to go to Tahoe, we love to ski, we love to camp. Under this law, if you accidentally hurt an endangered species or kill an endangered species, you will not only be fined $20,000, you could go to jail, and you are guilty until proven innocent. That guilt is proven, or innocence is proven in a court of their peers, not your peers. So why weren't we told about this? Why weren't we told by our representatives so we could call our Congress people and say, we do not like this law? So, another fact, down with the dams, dam to the people. As they say, all these plans are based on global warming, right? And the glaciers melting. The glaciers are supposed to add a 1.4 meter water rise in our seas. Over 1,000 U.S. dams have already been removed. This is billions of acre-feet of fresh stored water that we use to irrigate, grow crops, survive by. Groups like Patagonia, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, Environmental Defense Fund, they're all behind this. In fact, a organization called American Rivers is also behind it. And as you can see, it says there are roughly 26,000 dams that right now need to be looked at. At the bottom, it says, help us reach our goal of removing 100 outdated dams in 2012. So they've already removed the Elwha Dam. This is the largest dam removal in history thus far. And here's what Bruce Babbitt, who used to be the Secretary of the Department of Interior, recently said. With public opinion now moving our way, nationally and in the Northwest, we ratcheted up our efforts in Congress to finish off the Elwha dams. Slowly, at what seemed a glacial pace, funding started to flow, finally coming to fruition in the Obama administration. Then he goes on to say in his letter on the American Rivers website, others will have their own compelling priorities, and there are still 75,000 dams under consideration. So here's what the Elwha used to look like, and here's what it looks like now. There's what it looked like, and that's what it looks like now. And this is all because of an endangered species. So now that takes us to the Klamath River project, and I'm sure Sheriff Lopi will talk to you more about it. The largest dam removal will happen in California if they get their way. These are 4 hydroelectric clean green. Remember, this is all about being green. Clean, green, energy, renewable dams providing inexpensive electricity to over 70,000 homes and businesses, irrigation for crops, recreation. It is a booming industry. It is needed in California. We need that revenue, and they want to remove this dam. Behind these dams, there's a series of 4, is over 20 million cubic yards of sediment or pollutants. So the very same fish that they are trying to save by taking out these dams so that fish can swim upstream a little bit further is the same fish they will kill for years and years to come as 12,000 plus miles of pollutant sludges its way 187 miles out to sea. And you and I will pay for this in many ways. So what's the impact? The impact is our lives. This is sustainability. These are people's lives. And Hetch Hetchy is now under consideration. In fact, our water is going to be on the ballot this November. And when you have crises like this, it creates fear and concern for people. And then when we're concerned and we're living in fear, we beg for bigger government to protect and serve us. And as a result, we lose more freedom and we lose more liberty. How many knew that in California, the California Department of Fish and Game is trying to reintroduce the protected gray wolf? As you can see, right here, this wolf is collared. You can go to California Department of Fish and Game's own website, and you can see them tracking this wolf. If you kill this wolf on your property, it's attacking your livestock, and you kill this wolf, they will track that wolf to your property, and you will get fined and could go to jail. So, here's from our own California Department of Fish and Game website. Right here, this was where OR7, he's a young 2.5-year-old male wolf, came down from Oregon, and this is where he's been. He's been hovering around Siskiyou County. Then there's this plan, look, for gray wolf activity in California. Many of us have been in meetings where our own government is saying that California can handle 400 wolves. Would you ever, now knowing that there could be wolves released, would you let your children out on a lake, for example? Would you let them go camp by themselves? Would you let them go be by themselves in the wilderness? The answer is probably not. So how do you implement Agenda 21, which is all about control? You attack the family, you attack the church like we heard earlier, you attack our farmers and ranchers, you blame cars and agriculture and people as the largest polluters. You implement walkable, livable communities, you implement cap and trade. You skyrocket costs. You increase regulations on homes and businesses. You change general plans. Instead of in San Carlos general plan, my general plan back in, I think it's 2007, suggested that you take open space and turn it into wilderness, and then the next step, you turn it into wildlands. Now, why is that important? Because Congress, the Department of Interior, controls lands. Congress controls wilderness. The Department of Interior, which we have a rogue Department of Interior secretary right now who wants dams removed all across the United States, he would then be in charge of open space. You appoint government staff to governing boards, no longer elected officials, regional government with appointed officials. You implement the America Great Outdoors Initiative. That was another one of Obama's first. Under that plan, the America Great Outdoors Initiative, it was to link all national parks together. You nudge people out of the rural lands, and you create a crisis, and you force behavior change, and you make it sound like that's what the people wanted. So I did go to Rio, and this is David Cadman. He is the president, international president of ICLEI, International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. How many have heard of ICLEI? ICLEI is in almost every city here in the Bay Area except Belmont. And ICLEI, as I mentioned earlier, works with special interest groups and local governments to create policy.
So we began this Cities for Climate Protection program, and it reached 800 communities around the world. Probably now it's up to around 1,200 communities around the world. And obviously we've looked at California as being a model for beginning to look at how do you put standards in place that can really drive you towards the best possible practices. And ultimately what it comes down to is energy efficiency. And I know a number of jurisdictions, including my own province, British Columbia, have looked at the California model and said, that makes sense to us. This is what we want to do as well.
When it comes to how California is integrating transportation and building development, through AB 32 is really one of the first models of really saying, okay, we have to, as far as future planning goes, transportation has to be considered an area.
Well, I mean, this is now standard planning practice, that the built world and transportation have to be complementary. That you cannot have a sustainable city unless you A, build the best buildings you can, but B, that you integrate the transit systems so that more people are able to go to those services and move around in the most efficient way possible. And we've done that in Vancouver as well. We've looked at it and said, we need to reduce the use of the car and shift over towards a pedestrian, cycling, public transit world. And we've done that. Now in our downtown core, 20% of the trips are by car, 80% are by walking, cycling, and public transit. And that's the changes that really begin to reduce greenhouse gases. The interesting thing as well is they bring more people downtown. And when you bring more people downtown, you have a more lively downtown environment. So all of a sudden, instead of everyone working downtown and then going to the suburbs, you have people working and living downtown, which means that there's a stimulus for business there in terms of restaurants and all the facilities that those people want. And there's a vibrance on the street, which means that it's safer.
What about local control issues with like planning at a local level where you have these formulas that maybe they don't want to necessarily abide by? I mean, some cities are very interested in this and other cities are slow to get on board. So how do you...
Well, what we do is we have, and I can't really talk about California's because I don't know. What I can talk about is how it's done where I am, which is that there's a requirement for every municipal jurisdiction to have a community plan and then to integrate that community plan into their region. So that's the way we've done it. And most of our cities are fairly keen to have a sustainable plan. And the question that they ask is, well, if we build a more compact metropolitan community, will it be supported by public transit dollars? Because if you build it and then you still have cars, then you've got a problem. So it's got to be supported by public transit dollars simultaneously. And I think most people, you know, there's a certain resistance initially because you say, well, you know, we live in a car culture. But once people begin to live in it, they understand that this is a better style of life. And I mean, for instance I'll give you is we opened a new transit line for the Olympics. And I was very worried that the transit line wouldn't have the volume. But because of the Olympics, and we said to people, look, don't drive downtown because there won't be parking, and there are a lot of areas that are going to be secured for the Olympic facilities. And so there was a huge uptake of public transit. And I thought, okay, now what will happen after the Olympics? Well, after the Olympics, people who had tried public transit said, I'm not going back to my car. Why do I want to spend all that money on gas and all that money on parking when I can get a bus or a transit pass and get downtown quicker?
Carbon credits, real quick. California, is implementing this now. There was a number of states, western regional states, that were part of this initial initiative. They've dropped out. I think Quebec is now trading with California.
Yes.
But the rest have not. How do we get the others on board? And is that idea sustainable if you don't have everybody involved?
I think it's very difficult to have a real carbon trading regime as long as you've got very few parties participating. You have to have at least a national trading scheme or a state trading scheme to make that work. We didn't go that way in British Columbia. We put an energy tax in place, the province did, and said basically, we're going to tax the consumption in order to try and reduce the use and then put the money towards the alternative, which is public transit.
You now pollute and you now pay. So isn't it interesting? He said regime and scheme in there. And isn't it interesting that he also said that this is what people want? How many people want that lifestyle? So here's all the words that you hear with United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, smart growth, the 3 E's, economic justice, social equity, environmental justice. We hear these every day now. Groups like Association of Bay Area Government, Metro Transportation Commission, transit-oriented districts, priority development areas, or PDAs, migration habitat corridors. Heather found a great report from California Department of Fish and Game that goes through and shows where deer migrate and other animals migrate, and how that migration goes through private property and how that needs to be safeguarded. We have regionalism, rezoning, public-private partnerships, conservation easements, of course, ICLEI. California has already passed, 2 weeks ago, a new bill that creates transit-oriented districts where every acre must have 40 units on it, and a percentage of those 40 units has to be low income housing. So here's another interesting video that we took at Rio. This is how Google is helping in this whole plan.
We don't have much preserved areas, but where we don't have roads, we do have. So they ask us to draw this map where the white is road areas and the green is roadless areas. And the roadless the area is, greener it is, so it's more preserved, right? For example, if you go to Brazil, Africa, Brazil, in the rainforest, okay, in the rainforest where it has less roads, it's much better preserved.
Right. Interesting.
And the coastline of Brazil where the roads are concentrated, or even the U.S., for example.
White. Look at all those roads.
Yeah, you see that in the U.S. the areas of preservation.
How many have flown over from California to New York or east or recently? Is that what the United States looks like? Do we have that many roads? But this is what the public is being told. And this is the ultimate result. Again, you release wolves, you have massive regulation, you monumentalize areas of the western United States. You make it impossible for people to live in the rural lands. You prepare for people to move in high-density living areas with the One Bay Area Plan, the Grand Boulevard Initiative, and you get this, which is, I know, has everybody seen this? Not everybody, quite a few have not. The red zones here are no human use zones. No humans are allowed in those zones. The yellow zones, highly patrolled areas, no human use zones as well. So if you live in the red or the yellow, which Sheriff Lopi lives in the red, he won't be living there anymore. You go to Tahoe to ski, it's red. You won't be going to Tahoe to ski anymore. Where we get to live are these areas right here, which is why you see our government pushing these plans through for high-speed rail, high-speed buses. They've already gotten federal funding, and like David Cadman in that interview said, the way you start pushing these through, these transportation plans, is you get funding. Once you get federal funding, you cannot stop the plan. So we have this great constitutional sheriff's event.
The main reason we're here is to protect rural America.
I'm glad to be here. This is a major event, I think, for Northern California. These land and water issues are going to impact us all throughout California, and I think that Siskiyou County is going to be ground zero.
All sheriffs are sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And I just like a little bit of balance between the need to protect the environment, things like fish, because most of the people in my county are telling me, hey, you know what? Some of you federal and state agencies care more about fish, frogs, trees, and birds than you do about the human race. What's that all about? I think with public safety, almost every single decision made by federal and state governments impacts public safety and the health and welfare of our people. That's why the sheriffs are involved. And they also are there to uphold the law. And the sheriffs are intimately involved in this fight, because if we don't stand up, we are right now in a fight for our survival. We are fighting not only for ourselves, more importantly, we're fighting for the survival of our counties, of our local communities, and our children and our grandchildren.
Plumas County Unified School District used to be one of the wealthiest school districts in the nation because of the timber. And it's gone. It's just gone, and the mining's gone. And now they're looking at your water, and that presentation earlier tonight was absolutely terrifying.
There were quite a few people in the video that are here tonight. Could you please stand there? During that video, there was a lot of emotion. And if you people think that these are the only people that this dam removal is going to affect, you've got another thing coming. I can see the exact same thing happening in my county with our schools, with our city government, with our county government, with our state government, and the only thing that's out of control is the federal government.
But I think there's something they didn't count on, and it's this. That events like this, the coming together of sheriffs like this, is something that hasn't happened in the past.
Now, I grew up on a cattle ranch. I'm the 5th generation to live in that same old house in Big Piney, Wyoming. And it was really interesting growing up on that ranch, because we used to go to meetings where they would try to tell us that our cattle 150 miles away were somehow or the other impacting the geysers in Yellowstone Park. I am not kidding you. And I would listen to these guys and think, you know, if we were as bad as they say that we are, we'd have put ourselves out of business 4 generations ago. I think this is really interesting. You know Daniel Webster, the guy that wrote the dictionary? He did not write the first dictionary so y'all could spell better. In fact, if you look at one of the first dictionaries in the first publication, in the very front it says that he wrote the dictionary so that they couldn't change the meaning of the words in the Constitution.
We need to realize that water rights, mining rights, all have a private property clause or an issue with them. Don't let them take them from you. Don't relinquish them, and don't give them up. Stand up and defend for what you believe in. I have a duty and an obligation to keep you from bad government.
That video was a result of the Bay Area getting together with Siskiyou County. And it was a result of Nina and Mario getting involved, Heather getting involved, Orlean getting involved. And we spent a month planning this Defend Rural America event, which is now launched into more sheriff's events, which Sheriff Lopi has been going from meeting to meeting to let people know that the sheriffs, the elected sheriffs, are there to protect them. It was Noah Webster, not Daniel Webster, on that quote. So do we need change? And are we the ones who should be changing, or is it our government that should be changing? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten, and we keep voting in the same people over and over and over again. We have a status quo government. Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence. When you look at California and you think about how hard it is to win as a conservative, as someone who believes in the Constitution as the greatest document the world has ever known, people say in California the bar is way too high to ever get California back. California is done. Well, if Thomas Jefferson believed that about freeing themselves from Britain, do you think we would have a free country today? For him, the bar was never too high. Thomas Paine, The American Crisis, December 1776. These are the times that try men's souls. We are in an American crisis right now. Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder their conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. Now, if Thomas Paine Paine and Jefferson were alive today, I believe they would be telling us this too. Do not give up. Do not let these people rob us of our freedoms and our liberties. Do not let them do this anymore. We must win and we must prevail. So, I am not asking you to get up, pick up your weapons and go on the front lines in the middle of winter. And I'm not asking you to be a sunshine patriot either, where the weather's good, you're willing to fight, because we are not in good weather times. We are in winterous, stormy times. And what I'm asking of you is to put me on the front line, because I'm willing to do it. I want to do it. I want to go toe to toe with a woman who feels that a 14-year-old should be given the right to vote for our president, which brings back Curtis's statement about voting and what they're doing to the children. If Jackie has her way, a 14-year-old who's being dumbed down and indoctrinated will be voting for our president. And I do think this is it. I do think that this is the election of our lifetime. And I'm asking for you not to pick up weapons of days gone by, but modern weapons, your time, your energy, your creativity, and of course your money. Because this is the election of our lifetime. Sheriff Lopi will tell you the same thing for elected sheriffs. The constitutional sheriffs are under attack right now. Our own government is working on ways to have Sheriff Lopi not elected again. So we need to stand up for the people who want to protect and serve our Constitution, because the bar is never, ever, ever too high for freedom. Not for the greatest state the world has ever known, and not for the greatest country the world has ever known. I want our freedom back. Somebody robbed me of my state. Somebody robbed you of your state. And I want our state back. So now it's time to imagine our future and invest in the future. And that means not just showing up to meetings. It means for the next however many days of the election, 50 plus days, to treat this like a marathon, because this is. Go out, walk precincts, help Sheriff Lopi, attend his events. Even if you've been to all his events, go to more of them, because the more people who show up, the louder voice we will have. So there are people who are willing to be on the front line and run this marathon, and we need you to run it with us, because we must prevail in the greatest country the world has ever known. So thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.